Ooh, I just used the Sharpie. I'm feeling a little bit lightheaded. Hello and welcome back to Bookish and welcome to Tag Tuesday. This week I wanted to do the Nonfiction Journey Tag. This tag was created by Hannah over at Hannah's Books, and she was kind enough to tag me. It's kind of a takeoff from the Shakespeare Journey Tag, which came around in September, and then the Victorian Literature Journey Tag, which came around in October. And since Hannah was kind enough to tag me, I thought I would do this. Plus, nonfiction is something I do like to read and am interested in and actually write, and so I really wanted to do this tag. So there are, I believe, 9 or 10 questions. Question number 1, first experience reading nonfiction. So I think probably my first experience of reading nonfiction was just not necessarily reading, but looking at the pictures in my dad's American Heritage Pictorial Civil War history, which I probably looked through, 1,000 times maybe when I was a kid. I particularly liked the little maps that they had in there with little guys on there, and they had numbers showing, crucial things taking place during each of the battles. I'm sure that's why today I am interested in history, and in particular why, military history seems to have something, it seems to be interesting to me. In addition to that, my school library, I know when I was in the 4th grade, had the We Were There At books, and I think I've talked about this before. We were there at the Battle of the Alamo, we were there at the Battle of the Bulge, which were supposed to be kind of first-person narrative histories of these events. I read those, and then I also know that from the Scholastic Book Company, when I was in the 3rd or 4th grade, I started buying what were these books about all-pro football players, because I loved football, and so I read those books too, and all of those would be nonfiction. Let's see, question number 2, has reading nonfiction ever brought you to tears? I'm going to say yes. The book I'm going to mention here that brought me to tears was by Philip Gurevich. We wish to inform you that tomorrow we killed with our families, which is a book about the Rwanda genocide, and there are some heartbreaking scenes in that book, not the least of which the letter, which gives the book its title. So definitely brought to tears, and there have probably been others, that I'm going to mention in this video. Question 3, people who played a role in your non-fiction reading journey. I can only really credit my dad here. My dad was a lover of history, particularly Civil War history, and certainly that's, the nonfiction I started reading. And that's all to his credit. My mom was an English teacher, so my love of fiction and novels and fiction writers comes from her. My love of history and reading nonfiction comes from my father. And then in terms of reading nonfiction, which isn't strictly speaking history, it's Booktube probably has played the biggest role in that. Oh, number 4 is, do you enjoy documentaries? And I do. I like them a lot, particularly documentaries. I think this is something that Hannah said in her video too, about writers or artists, and I do definitely have some favorites. The Center Cannot Hold, which is about Joan Didion and her career. The Pieces I Am about Toni Morrison is excellent. I'm Not Your Negro about James Baldwin is great. And then to get off the authors, The Birth of the Cool about Miles Davis is really extraordinary. I thought there was the PBS Hemingway series that came out. There was one about Flannery O'Connor, which was excellent, that had been out recently. And we're also supposed to name, a subject we would like to see a documentary about. And I would kind of like to see a new documentary. I'm sure there is one produced by the BBC at some point, but I'd like to see a new documentary about the World War I poets who, wrote, fought, died, etc. I really would be interested in that. Maybe Jen the Librarian could do that someday. Just saying, Jen. Question 5 is, have you read the biography of someone you identified with? And I'm just going to have to say no here. Biographies about people who did things, and I'm not trying to in any way, be self-deprecating here, but there's no way that somebody's going to be writing a biography of me. And so because of that, I feel like if I said I identified with anybody in these biographies, in some ways I would be, suggesting that they share something in common with me, and I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that, so I'm just going to say no. Question 6 is to read aloud a passage of beautiful writing from a work of nonfiction, and I chose what's going to be also on my favorites list, a short passage from Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, and you could pick this book up at almost any place, almost any page, I think, and find an example of beautiful writing. But this comes from the chapter in which she had been working to clear the pond on the property she bought of weeds so that her family could enjoy it more, I guess, as a swimming hole and something like that. And so she's out in a red kayak, had been out there pulling up weeds, I believe. I paddled hard and strong out to the deep water, pulling against the weight of the restraining vegetation, eventually breaking free. When I had exhausted my shoulders so that they were as empty as my heart, I rested on the water, closed my eyes, and let the sadness come, adrift. Maybe a little breeze came up, maybe a hidden current, or the earth tilting on its axis to slosh the pond, but whatever the invisible hand, my little boat began to rock gently, like a cradle on the water. Held by the hills and rocked by the water, the hand of the breeze against my cheek, I gave myself over to the comfort that came, unbidden. I don't know how long I floated, but my little red boat drifted the length of the lake. Rustling whispers around my hull drew me from reverie, and the first thing I saw upon opening my eyes were polished green leaves of water lilies and spatterdock smiling up at me again, rooting in darkness and floating in the light. I found myself surrounded by hearts on the water, luminous green hearts. The lilies seemed to pulse with light, green hearts beating with my own. There were young heart leaves below the water on their way up, and old leaves on the surface, some with edges tattered by a summer of wind and waves, and no doubt kayak paddles. I just literally opened the book. I remembered that there were scenes from that chapter about the pond, which I found to be particularly moving, and I just picked a passage and read it. That's how brilliant the writing in that book is. Are there any nonfiction works that intimidate you? And I'm going to say yes, the works of ancient Greek and Roman historians intimidate me. I just cannot get into, Herodotus or Thucydides or, for whatever reason, I can't get into those things. And so they intimidate me in the sense that I've never been able to read a long patch one. I did read a book by Tacitus, which I can't remember the name of right now, and that's the only one I've ever been able to get through. So yes, I would say that intimidates me, and largely because I failed in the past to get through them. Question 8 is tips for getting into reading nonfiction. So what I would say is, and this is kind of a variant of, pick something that you're interested in. Actually go to a bookstore, go to a physical bookstore and look in the nonfiction section and find something you think sounds fun. It might be about ping pong. It might be about toe polish. It might be about, tractors. Whatever it is that you think is fun, go find a book, pick it up, either buy it and read it or see if you can check it out in the library and try reading that, and what happens for me oftentimes is when I read one work of nonfiction, it leads to an interest in another. And so, one of the things that's true in my reading is that I have developed certain interests and I read a lot about those, or I read books about those things. And I think that's one real way to get into nonfiction reading is by doing that. Pick something fun, something that you want to read. Something that seems like it would challenge you in some way, and read that. And then let's see, question 9 is name some favorite nonfiction books. This would be probably dozens of books, so I'm just going to go with one I already mentioned, and that's Braiding Sweetgrass by Ragnvald Kimmerer. And then I also want to mention The Snow Leopard by Peter Matheson, which I just think is a brilliant meditation on life, finding inner peace, grief, the natural world, kind of a stranger in a strange place type book. It's just really brilliant, and a book that I definitely want to reread. And then we're supposed to tag people. Well, Hannah tagged about 3,000 people in her tag, and I think everybody I would tag has been tagged either by her or by Roz from Scaladating About the Books, who's also done this tag. So I'm not going to tag anybody, but if you are interested in nonfiction, you want to do this tag, please, do so. We'd love to see what you have to say. Anyway, there you go. Look forward to your comments in the comment section below. As always, thank you for watching.